Continuing the Mishnah Perek Zayin, Mishnah Base, with the first 11 melachas listed in this Mishnah, all refer to the baking of bread. The next 13 is a series which all involve the preparation of wool. The Mefarshim explain that the preparation was used to make the curtains in the Mishkan. So the next 13 are going to explain the whole process of how to prepare wool. So the first stage is hagoizes es hatzemer, where you actually shear the wool off the animal. It makes no difference whether the animal is alive or whether it's dead. That would still be an av melacha to be goizes the tzemer. Included in that would be plucking hair or cutting nails. That's a tolda of the melacha. If it was done with a keli, then it would be a nisa d'oraisa. If it was trimmed by just biting your nails by hand, then it would be a drabonon, but still, of course, also to do so on Shabbos. That's goizes as a semer. Hamalabnoi, the next stage, number 13, is libun, which is actually cleansing, washing the animal, washing the wool. Included in that, from a practical day-to-day Hilchos Shabbos point of view, is wringing any garment which is saturated with water would be libun. It depends on the circumstances, d'oraisa, drabonon, but that's what melabno means. The next one, number 14, is menaftzoi. Menaftzoi is combing it, taking a comb and sort of separating them. Then number 15 is hatsoiva. You would dye it. Taking the wool and immersing it in some sort of dye, that's considered an av melacha. Of course, it would only be, the min haTorah would only be asa if it was a permanent dye. If it was temporary dyeing, that would not be an av melacha. Number 16 is hatova. Hatova means that you're spinning the wool in order to twist the fibers together to make threads. Then you've got hamesech. Now, the next 4 melachas all involve the weaving process. They're included, of course, in this sort of category of preparation of the wool, and they're quite detailed and complicated. And one really needs to see a picture of the whole how they would make wool in those days, the whole ariga, the whole weaving process. But I will try and explain this as best I can. In those days, they would have a mechanism to make wool, where you would have 2 poles, one pole at the bottom, one pole at the top, and you would have vertical threads hanging down. That would be called the shesi, and then you'd have the orev. You'd have the horizontal threads going across. So I'm looking here at the Pnei Shabbos. There are many of them around, but I've got this Pnei Shabbos one where it's got lots of pictures here, and it makes it much clearer to understand what's going on. But hamesech is where you're actually sort of you're placing these vertical threads on the whole frame. So you've got 2 poles, and you're actually tying or sort of going round, taking the thread and putting them round from the bottom up to the top and down again into to make this frame of vertical threads. That's mesach. Then oise shtei botei nirin. Shtei botei nirin is, once you've done that, you've got these 2 beams with the thread going across them, and then you make these 2 botei nirin. Botei nirin is like a frame where these threads, which I've just mentioned, are going to go through. So if you oise shtei botei nirin, you're actually sort of setting these 2 botei nirin. In English they're called heddles. Then ha'orek shnei chutin, weaving 2 threads. So that would mean going across now. So once you've got the vertical threads going through, putting the threads being oreg horizontally, doing at least 2 of those, that would be the melacha of oreg shnei chutin. Then ha'potzea shnei chutin. Potzea shnei chutin is you're cutting it off. And you're removing the 2 threads, and that's in order to do the weaving. If it was not in order to do the weaving, then it would be mekalkel. Okay, so those are the four malachas related to the weaving process per se, and then continuing the categorization of preparing the wool, the 13 malachas. The next two are kosher and matir. Kosher is actually making knots, and matir is untying the knots. Min haTorah, it's got to be a kesher shel kayoma, but we're going to discuss these two malachas, kosher and matir, in more detail later on in Mitzvah Hashem. Then Tofer shtei tfiras. Tofer is the malacha of sewing. That you have to do shtei tfiras in order to be chayav the malacha. And korea minas litva shtei tfiras. Korea is the final malacha in this little section of these 13 malachas. Korea is tearing it, but it's almanas litva. If it's not almanas litva, then it's just mekalkel, and which is also midrabanan. In certain circumstances, it's considered mutter. So that's the end of the 13 malachas which are involved in the preparation of the wool. The next seven malachas all relate to preparing the skin of the animal to make some sort of parchment to klafim in order to write. So malacha number 25 is hatzod tzvi, to trap an animal. To be over the Issa D'Oraisa, the Av Malacha, it's got to be tzeda of a minoi notzut, which means the animal is normally trapped, for example, a deer or the like. A fly or a bee or something like that is not minoi notzut, is not normally trapped, and therefore that would only be an Issa D'Rabbanan. But again, in the 14th parak, we're going to discuss that in more detail. HaSheichtoi, the next stage after that, after you trap the animal, is to shecht it, and the min haTorah, any form of killing the animal would be asa, and you'd be chayav for. So therefore that would include not you sort of shechting it as we know with a sort of ritual slaughter, but even just stabbing the animal or battering it or anything like that, then that would be the malacha of shochet. If, however, you don't draw blood, you just strangle the animal, then that would be a tolda. It would still be also on Shabbos, of course, but it's a tolda, not an actual malacha. The next one is mafshitoi. You then flay the skin, you strip the skin off the animal, vahamolchoi, and the Mishnah then lists molcha, which is salting the animal, and then malacha 29, hama'abed es oiro, where you actually do ibud. So the Gemara says molcha and ma'abed es oiro is really the same thing. Molcha is just the beginning of the process of tanning the skin. So the Gemara therefore takes out one of these and says molcha and ma'abed es oiro is really one and the same, and therefore it takes out one and inserts sirtut. Sirtut is drawing lines. Either it means to draw sort of a line to cut out how you're going to cut a meaningful shape from the skin, or sirtut, as we know it today, means actually like a scribe, a sofer, would take a stylus and he would draw lines across the actual skin so that one can write, one has straight lines, or one could cut, etc. But sirtut is one, therefore one of the av melachas, and one of those two is taken out. You then smooth the skin so it's ready for usage, and then hamachatchoi, you cut it. So moiche would be you smooth it out. So for example, you would take some sort of machinery and smooth it over, and then mechatchoi, you'd cut it into sort of strips or the like, and then hakosev shtei osios. And the final two in this section would be kosev. Those were the seven. Kosev shtei osios, the actual ksiva, it's got to be two letters. Again, the source of this is in the Mishkan. They would have beams, and they would label up the beams to know which one matches with the other one. So when they would re-erect the Mishkan, they would make sure they've got the beams in the correct order. So on one beam on the side, you'd write aleph, on the next one, you'd write base. And so therefore it's got to be kosef shtei osios. V'hamochek al manas lichtov shtei osios, and mechika has got to be in order to be mochek, in order to be kosef shtei osios. Stam mechika, just stam erasing, without the purpose of being kosef further letters, would not be an issa d'oraisa. And again, it's got to be kosef, it's got to be permanent, but that, Zimaz Hashem, is to be explored further. Then, coming on to the final few malachas, habona v'hasosa. Bona is any form of construction. The famous tolda of Bona would be ohel, asias ohel. To be a deraisa, it's going to be an ohel keva, a permanent tent. To be a drabonon, it would be even ohel ara, even a temporary tent would be also. And then hasoser, demolishing. So it's got to be a constructive demolishing. Hasoser manas livnos. The Mishnah, the Tana doesn't actually say that, but that's inherent from the previous ones. So habona v'hasoser. And then number 36 is mechabe. Mechabe is extinguishing. V'hamaver and kindling. And as we've mentioned earlier, we've mentioned previously, mechabe, to be over the issa d'oraisa, mechabe has got to be in order. It's got to be a melacha shetzricha legufa, and the tzricha legufa was to make coals. You would extinguish the fire in order to make coals. If it was for any other purpose, for example, you just wanted to turn the light off in the room because it was too light and you wanted to go to bed, then that would still be mechabe, but it's melacha she'ein tzricha legufa, because it's not the ultimate purpose that it was intended for in the Mishkan. That's the machlokas Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda said you're still chayiv, Rabbi Shimon say you're potter. But either way, it would be also midrabanan to do a melacha she'ein tzricha legufa. So that's number 36 and 37. Number 38 is makeh b'patish. Makeh b'patish is the final blow when the worksmith, the metal worker, would hit his items. He would either sort of do a final blow on the anvil to smooth it out, ready for the next job, or it's really intended to mean any final finishing off of an item would be caught by makeh b'patish. And lastly, the 39th malach is hamoitzim rishus l'rishus, is carrying from one rishus to another rishus, and that's really going to be the theme of the next two mishnayos, the final two mishnayos of this parak, plus the theme of parakim, the next few parakim, parak 8, 9, 10, and 11. And indeed, of course, we've discussed it at the very beginning, the first parak as well. So that's the 39th malach. And the Mishnah concludes, Hari elu avos melachos, these are the avos melachos, arboim chosa achas, 40 less 1. And the Bar Tzunura, and indeed all the Mefarshim are troubled. Why do we have to say that Hari elu avos melachos, arboim chosa achas? We've mentioned that at the very outset of the parak, of the Mishnah. So the Bar Tzunura says, Afal gav tehod choshev luchad chada, osel hashmiinen da'afilu ovid inish al melachos sheboilim b'shabbos achas. Even though we've of course listed them, you could just count them up and you get 39. It's still, the Tana still finds it necessary to enumerate and to categorize them as 39 melachos to teach us that if a person does all of these melachos on Shabbos, behelem achas, in one sort of session of unknowing, it's not possible for him to be chayev more than 39. 39 is going to be the maximum that a person could ever be chayev. To kulahu sham melachos told us lahanach ovos, because any other melachos that you could think of are really going to be sort of subcategories of these 39 ovos melachos. The ishtakach the ovid av the told the delay v'loy mechayev elechado. And if a person, as we mentioned previously, does melachos and told us, then you're only going to be chayev one chatas because they're all caught, they're all sort of included in the actual heading of the melacha itself. That is the end of the second Mishnah of the 7th parak.